Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Cominos here. Good morning, Jarmani. Good morning, Phil. Good morning to everybody trickling in across the YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Substock stack streams that we have going on here. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic Friday thus far as we get ever so closer to the weekend. Not that weekends matter in my life anymore, but I'm sure for a lot of you, weekends are still a relevant thing. Um, Lots to get into here today, and I do want to give a final shout out to yesterday's the new friends that I made. Emma, Dane, Pete, and James with Resistance Radio had a really fun time doing a podcast. Instead of doing traditional Ben After Dark, for those of you that might have been looking for me on TikTok or Facebook, I went down to Green Bay or up to Green Bay. Whatever. I'm from Pittsburgh. Our directions are kind of subjective. I ended up in Green Bay yesterday evening on Resistance Radio, and there is a stream available on my YouTube page if you want to go ahead and check it out. So just about a 2 hour podcast, and it's almost all politics with a half an hour tangent about culture war issues exhibited in Marvel movies and other main budget movies, which, if you know me, you should probably get used to at this point. Um, Really fun time, really awesome guys. I didn't know what to expect, and I really did find myself enjoying. I didn't expect. Let's just say I'm a man of routine. Young Ben would probably kick my ass for how much of a routine that I have fallen into over the course of the last couple years of my life. Never in a million years did I expect to stay there, just kind of hanging out as long as I did. But I really enjoyed myself. So go ahead and look, check out their pod, and if you want to see the episode that had me on it, it is available on my YouTube page right now, which you should probably also subscribe to. But really fun time. That's Resistance Radio. So thanks again for the invite. And we talked about making it a monthly thing, which I would absolutely be down for. I'm sure we'll have at least a couple of those guys on this show over the coming weeks, as well as we kind of hammer out a bit more of a routine as to what things are going to look like here. Yes, thank you, Allie. For those of you listening on the Tuba U, Allie did just throw my link tree up in the comments section. So anybody who's looking for all the different ways to follow me, it's available right there in that link. You just have to click one link at a time, and it gives you the ability to stay in touch, support the show in any way you're able to. And like I said, every subscriber is free, so and it helps me quite a bit. And obviously, with the Monaco Brewing Times, those subscriptions helping out Kirk quite a bit as well. So hopefully, you guys can make it out there. Now, on to the news of the day, of course. Well, there's so much news of the day, but I know where I want to start. And by the way, we were supposed to be speaking with City Council member Alec Lefebvre at 9:15 today about a moratorium in Oshkosh. Unfortunately, he had to last minute cancel. I always wonder if it's the things I post that get me in trouble, where I'm calling out the masked Virgin Army as a bunch of bigots, and it's like, oh, is it really worth going on that show today? Welcome to the life of Ben Cominos. But nevertheless, we will see if we can reschedule with him, and I do want to keep it on everybody's radar, especially those of you listening to me in Oshkosh today, that there is potential for a 1 year moratorium specifically in your town for data centers, which probably makes a lot of people happy that enjoy this stream. Um, so on to the news of the day. Yesterday, I spent the first hour of the program, and honestly, the cancellation of this interview is going to make it easier because I didn't want to start here. Because I didn't want to only do it for 15 minutes, but now that I have enough time to really dive into what's going on, um, it's yesterday I went on for an hour about what ICE had done in Houston and the fact that there had been no evidence. And much like with the Mitch McConnell story, when you don't provide evidence, when you don't provide um any type of counter narrative, it kind of allows people to just kind of fill in the blanks on their own. We've seen Mitch McConnell freeze up in front of cameras. We've watched him age what feels like 5 years every single year of his life. And when no one is willing to put him on camera, the rest of us are just allowed to kind of run willy-nilly with it, to the point where Laura Loomer goes on Twitter and says, yeah, he's officially brain dead now. Whether or not that's true or not, we'll never know. And Lord knows you can't trust Loomer as far as you can throw her. But that doesn't change the fact that nobody is providing a counter narrative. Nobody's showing us Mitch smiling, eating a cup of Jello, right? So as long as we don't get the Jello pick, then we don't get the then all of our imaginations are allowed to run wild. And it's the same thing with ICE. With when we're looking at the ICE agents, whether you're talking about Renee Good and the fact that the pew pews went through the side window and not through the front window, when you look at Alex Preddy and you realize that they said he was trying to pull out his pew pew, and then the video shows that not only is he being held down by multiple men, he has his weapon or pew pew removed, and is then executed essentially from the back of the head. Both of those instances, the instances where one ICE agent claimed that he was being chased by a man with a shovel, only for that to be disproven shortly thereafter. Everyone really likes my Jello analogy. I'm glad that's the case. Um, Fill in the blanks. ICE ends up unaliving an American or an immigrant who really poses no threat, acts as if they are posing a threat, and then inevitably the evidence comes out that in fact they were not posing a threat, and then their orange dad president sweeps it under the rug, and all the MAGAs act as if justice was done. Yesterday, I went on an hour-long diatribe about the execution of a man in Houston, and I said, well, there is no evidence one way or the other. But what I do know is ICE lies all the time. And for them to say that this man tried to run them over with the vehicle, I instinctively, much like any time Elon Musk literally says anything, um, I instinctively believe that ICE is misrepresenting the data. That ICE is interested in self-preservation and being as cruel as possible to as many immigrants as possible, and everything outside of that attitude is irrelevant. I said that if there were ever a show that would be honest about ICE, and if it came out that in fact their lives were in danger, that I would be the first one to post a mea culpa saying, my bad, I jumped to conclusions. I assumed ICE was being nefarious again because they have a track record of behaving in a nefarious manner. So this one's on me. It turns out that their lives were at stake here, and we do have to do our best to report on this truthfully. Well, 24 hours later, it turns out I was probably right. Very, very right. Again, this does not prove anything in a court of law, but if you haven't seen what I posted on all of my socials yet, I'm going to read it to you and allow you guys to decide on your own whether or not you believe what's going on. Now, the claims are that a 52-year-old man, with a family man with no criminal history, attempted to run over the ICE agents. Or should I say, the men with masks and no verifiable identifiers sprinting at a vehicle in an alarming fashion that I'm sure the rest of us would all handle very calmly and precisely. But them damn Mexicans, they're just not calm under pressure. We're supposed to believe that this man with no criminal history and no experience with a violent record all of a sudden became a violent madman the second a bunch of masked thugs decided to run up on him. Let's see now. Fun fact, there were 3 other people in the car who are still alive. 3 other people who are currently detained and under threat of being deported. And it makes me wonder what kind of information they may have, if only there were quotes and easily accessible information that might allow me that kind of information. Washington Post. Democracy dies at the Washington Post reports. DHS released a statement hours after the deadly shooting saying that Salgado Araujo had rammed an immigration and customs enforcement vehicle and weaponized his white work van in an attempt to run over an an ICE law enforcement officer. That is a lie, wrote Jose Trinidad Rojas, 51 years old, in a handwritten statement. It is impossible for them to say that they were going to get run over. There were no officers in front or behind the vehicle. They were on the sides. During the interviews, the attorney said the men were all bothered by news coverage of the agency's version of what unfolded, which they watched on television inside the detention centers. They're good people who didn't deserve this, Balderas Ibarra said. They were cooperating and not resisting. This is a man who's taking their case pro bono, Ibarra. Um, Said he is focused on securing his client's release from the detention center and calling for an independent investigation. I believe the ICE agents are lying, he said. Victor Salgado said his brother was yelling for help as he was bleeding out. It just happened so fast, Salgado told the attorney. The three men lay helpless as their boss lay dying. Say Kiran Escobar Verdad, Victor recalled an ICE agent saying to him in a mocking tone. He relayed that memory to Ibarra. You wanted to escape, right? Three men provided their testimony as to what happened when the masked Virgin Army, unqualified to do anything other than bully immigrants, decided to show up, murder another man, and then say that they felt that their delicate little lives were threatened. Three men were interrogated separately, and all are recounting the exact same story in the exact same way. Three men were interrogated, recalling the same story in the same way, while an agency that has a very thorough and well defined track record of lying really seemed to have been caught in a lie. Not only were they caught in a lie, but it seems as though they were mocking the individual that they shot under what appears to be a false pretext of a threat to their life. And the only reason we know that is because of the three men who were interrogated separately of one another, all telling the same story. I watched a video of a separate instance where a man had his head banged off of a brick wall while these morons were rough handling him while he was already in cuffs. And there were two people standing next to them, videotaping them with, or videotaping, how old am I? Recording them with their phone. 15-ish feet away. And one of these masked virgins got mad that there might accidentally be some accountability for what happened and then proceeded to rough up the person videoing him. If you're wondering why Americans have to video these bigots, it's because if they don't, there's no evidence of them murdering people in the streets. The citizens are doing the right thing. The people supporting ICE will be pretending in 10 years that they didn't. And they're just enjoying their little white boy power trip right now. But that will come to an end very, very soon. Like I said yesterday, the only solace, because I know most of these uneducated hicks are probably going to get away with this scot-free. And that's very frustrating. But what does give me solace is knowing that after the shellacking in November and after we replace whatever the hell this MAGA movement is, because it sure as shit isn't about affordability, that these people will get fired and they will lose these massive stipends that they were promised. And I am looking forward to that very much. I'm looking forward to learning about the economic strife they thrust their family into because they're going to have to repay whatever they spent that money on that is not theirs, their blood money. And I see Lorelei talking about the video. I saw the video as well. It looks as though the white van is doing a U-turn, and then the ICE vehicle, excuse me, Mass Virgin vehicle, does a K-turn to follow them. It's through some trees. It's incredibly far away. All I know is I saw about 47 different angles of Luigi after what happened, and it seems as though we're struggling to get any video evidence of what took place in Houston in any kind of way. But what I do know is you can bank on the track record and the undeniable stupidity of the inbred morons that decide to work for ICE. And the fact that they will get caught in that lie. Jim says we should put the immigration centers to use and fill them with every ICE agent. I can get behind that. Yeah, oh, by the way, those of you watching on the tube of you, the comments are now up on the screen so everybody can read them as they go along. I'm still going to read them until I connect TikTok to it, just so everybody can stay here. Sensei just saying, preach, brother Ben. Um, and for the record, um, I would like to highlight, so 52 people have lost their lives in ICE detention facilities since Trump took office, and it's disgusting and probably borne about by racism, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I would like to highlight that 26 people lost their lives under the Biden administration. Now, that's 4 years versus 1.5 years under Trump, and it's only going to get worse as he becomes more extreme because he can't run on economics, right? I'm about to dunk on him and his housing market in just a little bit. He can't run on economics, so he has to run on cruelty to immigrants and hope that his followers buy into it. So it's going to get worse. But I do want to highlight that 26 immigrants lost their lives in detention centers under the Biden administration, and that's disgusting as well. And much like the kids in cages conversations from Trump 1.0, I do think it's important to highlight that these issues do not go away when Donald Trump leaves. They are just less in your face, less cruel, and less obvious. But it doesn't change what's happening regardless of who's in office. Good morning, Larry. Always remember that the vote blue no matter whose strategy doesn't necessarily put the problems to bed. Obama built the cages. MAGA uses that as a bad faith argument, but as somebody who is not coming at you in bad faith, the Democrats were putting children in cages before Donald Trump 1.0. Trump just took it to the nth degree. People were losing their lives in ICE detention centers under Biden. The Trump administration just took it to the nth degree. As a smart man oftentimes says, Democrats maintain a status quo that is absolutely unacceptable. The Republican Party drags us kicking and screaming even further away from that status quo in the negative direction. And then the Democrats show up and say, well, okay, I guess we got to live within this new status quo now. And I am not accepting immigrants being held in concentration camps as an acceptable loss, even when it's a Democrat in office. So, like, always do remember that while this is in your face right now, and you're probably pissed as hell right now as to how these people are treating human beings, please understand that there is a problem in this country that exists no matter who's in office. ICE funding increased all 4 years. Remember that. Both sides of the aisle are complicit in the chaos that we are living in. That's kind of been my sentiment. And a lot of people hate that. And I never want it to sound like I imply. Obviously, Democrats propose a better existence than whatever the fuck the Republican Party is supposed to be these days. I'm struggling to figure out what they actually do. But please do not mistake that as me saying that the Democrats are worth voting for, supporting, or giving your money to. We need wholesale change taking place in government. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get it anytime soon, unfortunately, because Democrats would rather run on, let's run on keeping the detention centers open so that some of the MAGAs will vote for us. They're not going to. Spoiler warning. Brian sending a statement from NATO. Hit me with it, Brian. I'll keep an eye out for it. I just want to hop on the Facebook page. I want to start scouring this a little more frequently just to make sure I don't miss anything. Every time I forget to turn the volume down. There we go. And thank you for the follow. I appreciate that very much on the TikTok. Um, D says the Mexican government says it is going to hold the U.S. accountable for the deaths of Mexican nationals. Not sure what that's going to look like, but hope it happens. I said it earlier in the week, and I'll say it again. We should be so lucky to have a president like Claudia Sheinbaum here in America. I look at the things that she does for her citizens and her nation every single week, and I just sit there in abject jealousy. Yes, you did tell me about that either yesterday or 2 days ago on TikTok, and yeah, it's wonderful that she does it. I hope she takes them on. And I'm sure Trump is going to levy a bunch of incredibly racist and sexist remarks against her. And I'm sure his followers are going to become very anti Claudia Scheinbaum people because she does stupid shit like provide Medicare for all and like pull record numbers of people in her country out of poverty, like through like basic uh, policy decisions. But what are you going to do? I wish she could go after Trump personally. That is the kicker, right? Is that all of these lawsuits oftentimes find themselves we're paying for it, right? Like Scheinbaum in Mexico as a country will sue our DOJ or sue our immigration, our customs enforcement, our border patrol, whatever the situation may be, and our tax dollars will pay it out, and they deserve to lose. Don't I'm not complaining about that, but there is a layer of frustration that the individuals who are being the bigots, who are taking advantage of immigrants, who are acting like this kind of hate and bullying is acceptable, realistically are going to come out of this unscathed and in all likelihood quite a bit richer than they were when they started. Brian says, warning European countries that they are losing the war on immigration. They are what? You mean a national security concern to remain pure? No, exactly. You know who else does that, Brian? Is Elon Musk. Elon goes all over the Twitter and posts the most hateful stuff about Muslims and other immigrants going to European nations. It's why when people tried to say that wasn't a Yahtzee salute, I'm like, oh, well, look at his behavior every single day and tell me that that's wrong. Because I'd argue how he acts every single day kind of backs up a point. What's Joe Gonzalez saying there? Mexico version of ICE just shot at a van full of immigrants and killed six of them. She's quiet about that. I mean, Mexico can handle their like they should take care of that. My tax dollars aren't going to what Mexico's doing. It's kind of like how there's a lot of countries doing what our allies in the Middle East are doing to the people of Gaza and Lebanon. The reason I'm more mad about that and not what the other countries are doing is because they're not doing it with our blessing. Our allies are, and that's where I have issues with. I see Asher talking about the Cal-Maine food settlement. Oh, believe you me, I jumped into that about a week ago. If you're new here, Asher, I apologize. I don't. Oh no, I know who you are. I haven't seen you in a while. Tell me about it, dude. Tell me about it. Low IQ, don't you know, says Hal. CKK says, I'm curious how often you engage and speak with Trump Republican ICE supporters in person. I hear it in your voice. You don't understand why this is happening. When I talk to them, they don't. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Go ahead and finish your thought there, and I'll read the second half of it. But here's the thing, man. I gave the benefit of the doubt. Tim, I don't know how long you've been listening because there's a couple of Tims that are in the listener base here, and I don't want you to out yourself as to which one you are. So I don't know how long you've been listening, but you can go back. My show is still available on Spotify. Um, Back when it was on the radio. And you can find episodes of me saying, look, I'm not against the idea of immigrants coming to this country, and I'm not even against the idea of them sneaking into this country or seeking asylum, because I know that if I had run afoul of a cartel or um, found myself in some kind of dire straits that I thought could be solved in America. And America got back to me and said, yeah, well, give us 2.5 years and we'll let you know. I would sneak into the country. And anybody pretending like they wouldn't is either lying or has no survival instincts. And I'll let you pick which one of those you think is more accurate. But I know I would just sneak in and hope for the best, even though I had no malintent once I got there. I just know that where I am isn't acceptable, and I'm going to figure out how I can get out of that position. I feel like that's a normal human reaction to being in a dangerous place. And I would say undocumented immigration is artificially suppressing wages in a number of different industries. When you have snuck into a country and your employee knows that, somebody fill Asher in on TikTok as to what happened, please. When when your employer knows that you are not legally in a country, they are willing to pay you a lot less for the work that you are doing. And then when they can get you to agree to work for a lot less, they can then go to the American born citizens, the white people, and say, hey, Jose is working for $38,000. You're sitting here telling me you need 46. So you either can go find another job or you can work for what Jose's working for. And I would say we need legislation that prevents that kind of thing from happening. We need to prevent CEOs and business owners from being able to exploit these kind of undocumented workers, and by doing so suppress the wages for everybody, because there's a number of factors contributing to the cost of living crisis, and one of those is wage suppression, and one of the elements of wage suppression is the undocumented immigrant conversation. I was having those conversations with MAGAs, CKK, and they were on board. And I think they were just pretending that they weren't bigoted, or they just didn't realize that that red American blood would start blowing through their veins the second they saw one of those mass virgins take the life of an American. I don't know. I have no idea. But they acted like they were sane until the insanity started. And now, as you highlight, they don't care. You're not wrong. I appreciate that, Asher. We got a new studio coming in September. 80% of the audience came with me. If you haven't already, Asher, subscribe to my Tube of You page. I'm trying to pass up that particular shitty little radio station, and I'm about 100 people away. So, believe you me, there's going to be a celebration the second I pass them up, because they had like 10 years to build that following, and I've been doing this for about 2 months. So, hop on the Tube of You and hook me up. Um, but so it didn't take long. It took 24 hours for people to realize exactly how much ICE, in all likelihood, was lying. Again, until we see the video, I withhold the right to call out exactly what I'm looking at. But based on the evidence that is available right now, what's up, McTuba? Thanks for being here. Based on the evidence of what is available right now, it looks like ICE just executed another individual, a family man, a hardworking guy. We're here for the worst of the worst. Don't call me racist. I just want the crime gone. He wasn't doing crimes. He was just existing. Thank you, Asher. I don't play. I don't play Marvel Rivals. I'm familiar with it. I don't have the kind of time these days, but I dig. I dig what the game's about. Abolish ICE is the moderate position. Justin's position in my YouTube account is probably the left wing position at this point. Any blue MAGA Democrat that isn't going to run on getting rid of ICE entirely doesn't mean business and isn't going to get my vote. ICE has no business acting this way. We can look at immigration reform. We can look at ways to prevent people that we don't want coming in this country from coming in this country. We're not going to live like this. You know what blows my mind? And I'm kind of teasing a little bit about what's coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. But as I've kind of been intimating all week, my Twitter feed is inundated with anti-flock sentiment right now, and it is predominantly coming from right-wing accounts like Eric Bott and Wall Street Apes and Shadow of Ezra that mostly drive engagement by shitting on trans people and making actually anti-Semitic comments. But now they're not doing that anymore. They're doing almost exclusively content about flock cameras, and specifically the times that flock cameras are defaced, taken down, or hit with those green lasers that are super cheap and affordable and break flock cameras forever once you shine one into the lens. And they're pro that, by the way. They're pro all those things. It blows my mind that MAGA is self-aware enough to realize that the flock camera is a threat to their safety, a threat to their security, a threat to their privacy, a threat to their sovereignty. But they don't realize that ICE is the exact same thing. Like, there's part of me that can't wait for Democrats to only strengthen ICE even further, but instead of aiming them at immigrants, aim them at the white people that join Patriot Front or join these alt-right groups. You notice how those pictures are starting to pop up again. And I was at Aaron the intern's house for the 4th of July on Saturday, and one of her family members was talking to me about Patriot Front. I said, you know what's suspicious to me about Patriot Front? They're all in shape. Like, MAGA's out of shape. They're fat and lazy. Like, they're not like fit and tone. And like, this is like an army of like 100 white boys that are all in the best shape of their life. There's no Billy Bob with his beer gut sticking out. There's no like one guy that clearly couldn't scale a chain link fence to save his life. You guys know the type I'm talking about. None of that. Like, they're all jacked. They're all like fit. They're tatted up in different places and they're ready to just take on the world. I'm like, there's something suspicious about these people. Like, I'm not saying that these groups don't exist and that people don't want to join them. I'm saying there's something suspicious about it. Don't tell me that that doesn't seem weird to you, because I know how out of shape America is. I'm not in shape. I'm just thin, you know? Like, I'm not in shape. America's not in shape. We know this. Our obesity rate is stupid. Why do all these fascist groups always look like they are just carved out of clay? How does that keep happening? If they want me to believe these psyops, they got to start putting more fat people in Patriot Front, because I'm sitting there and like, violated. I'm with you. I'm going to start. The new studio that I'm getting has a gym connected to it. So I have a feeling you're going to see me get yoked. We'll see. We'll see if I have it. Yeah. I'm not saying nobody's in shape, guys. I'm saying per capita, there are a lot of people not in shape in this country. Vote for Aragon says there's Maha to consider. Yeah, I get that. Maha also like doesn't vaccinate their kids though. So like I'm not 100% sure that even Maha's into lifting weights. Hell, Donald Trump thinks that your life has a finite amount of battery space, and if you use too much of it, you uh that's how you end up passing away. So like I'm not sure that Maha came to the is bringing their best, you know? What do I bench right now? Who the fuck knows, man? I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know, dude. I read and I talk for a living. I don't exercise. God gifted me with being born tall, so I haven't ever struggled like meeting women, and then so that has prevented me from ever improving myself at the gym in any way. We got Asher popping on through the TikTok live here. Hopefully, although I've made this promise to you guys enough times at this point, but I have plans Sunday this weekend and Saturday evening, but today and all of tomorrow morning, I think I'm going to figure this shit out so that you guys can actually all hear each other. But this will be the last time. And I'm sorry for shining you up at the ceiling, Asher, but I got to hold my phone up to my microphone so that the YouTube and Facebook people can hear you. What's on your mind?
I just have you seen the Vermont senator that's arguing for sortition?
No.
He has a book out that's talking about how we should have random lottery systems for our officials rather than elections, and it's pretty damning to see his arguments and viewpoints, and then to go around and look at how society is operating, where it's just money. It's just money now, especially with Citizens United. I just have a super bleak view of America, and I'm just starting to live like we don't live in a democracy anymore.
Yeah, I know that sentiment is extra prevalent right now amongst Democrats because of what's going on in Maine, although he should be stepping down. I don't want to take away from that. But yeah, and what's crazy, Asher, is that like I would obviously have to look into it, but if you wanted my gut shot reaction, I'd probably be like, well, that's probably better than the system we got. You might end up with some shitheads, but you might end up with some pretty okay people. I'm sure there's flaws to that. I don't want that to be the system, but given how broken our country is, I'm like, well, I'd probably have to hear him out, which that's a pretty damning indictment in and of itself.
Yeah, Aristotle said sortitions are for the people and elections are for the oligarchy. That's
Huh.
crazy.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild. I'll look into it. You said that was Vermont?
Yeah, Vermont. Yeah, the book is endorsed by Bernie already. You know, if that tells you anything.
That's interesting. I'll look into it, man. I appreciate the tip. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, take it easy. Um, yeah, that's a damning indictment in and of itself. Send ICE to Wall Street. There we go. That was what I said. I want to run on the platform of we're actually going to increase ICE's funding, but instead of aiming them at immigrants, we're going to aim them at 930 billionaires and make sure that they pay the appropriate amount of taxes come April 15th. I love that idea since MAGA loves ICE so much. Let's aim ICE at the actual people holding this country back rather than pretending that it's the poorest and lowest on the pyramid below us. And by the way, I need to get better at doing this as well. Anybody who wants to join the conversation, I'm going to post the through YouTube, that is. I'm going to post the link there. Unfortunately, Facebook people, you have to be on YouTube in order to use that link. So go ahead and hop over there if you ever want to get your thoughts in there as well. ICE for Wall Street, aka the IRS. Right, but I want them using ICE tactics. I want them standing in front of vehicles, pew pews drawn, talking to Bill Gates, being like, where the fuck's the rest of the money? That's what I want. And when Bill Gates tries to drive away, well, we'll just have to see if ICE feels like their lives were threatened or not. That's how I want to see ICE repurposed in the future. Sharon says we don't want dark people in this country, but what is the number one selling beer? A Mexican beer. You can hardly drive more than a half a mile anywhere in the Fox cities and find a Mexican restaurant. Exactly. Exactly. It's a level of hatred. I said this earlier, it might have been yesterday. It is a level of hatred derived from white people who hate their lives. And then they see progressives and Democrats talk about white privilege and talk about how difficult it is to make it in America as a minority. And they sit there saying, it's difficult for me to make it right now. And like, there are so many avenues for you. I'm not saying it's easy. It's been an incredibly stressful 3 weeks for me. like, like it's not easy. But as long as you keep your nose to the grindstone as a white boy, or at least as a passing white boy, you'll be fine. You always will be. And then the immigrants in this nation do have a harder ladder to climb. Like, and they get mad at that. And they'd rather kick them out than embrace the reality that maybe their life is in the shitter because they, A, voted for people that chose to sell out their future to billionaires, and B, didn't figure out creative enough ways to get out of the situations that they're in. Robin says my daughter lost her ACA because she made 4,000 more than the limit. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. That's what Democrats do. I've said Republicans make life harder on poor people. Democrats make life harder on middle class people. Nobody makes life harder on wealthy people. That's the system that we have in place. I'm supposed to say congrats on the promotion, but it sounds like the promotion was actually a demotion in terms of actual living standard, which is a problem because then that discourages moving forward. And then the MAGAs point to those kind of examples and say that's why we have to get rid of all welfare, all government programs because of what you're describing. And I believe the Democrats purposefully make it look that way so that Republicans can say, let's get rid of it. This is what I say. This is why I say both parties suck. This is why I say it's two sides of the same coin. A lot of times I say that, and I think some of you guys think that I believe that they are literally the same thing. No, they are two distinctly different mechanisms operating in a way to keep us chasing our tail. Again, Democrats will be able to run elections on we're going to neuter ICE, and they will win a lot of those elections. There will be no concessions about health care, affordability, housing. It will all be about ICE, and it will win. And MAGA will sit there bitching that all they're doing is talking about ICE and winning. And I'll say, waka waka, MAGA. Maybe you should have voiced your opinion a little louder then about how anti you were ICE thugs murdering Americans and immigrants in the street, because it seems to be a trend that keeps on happening. This isn't a third world country, damn it. That's insane. So by getting a promotion, she gets to keep less money in her pocket. Exactly. I worked with a woman who um in order to get rental assistance, this was back in like 2023. In order to get rental assistance, you had to make less than something like $24,000. I don't remember the exact number. If I'm misquoting that by a little bit here or there, that's not intentional. But it's something like $24,000. And so she's saying like, obviously she's like, I make less than that and I get rental assistance, but I don't think I need to describe to you, because she knew the kind of show that I do. She's like, I don't think I need to describe to you that $24,000 is not enough to get by in this economy right now. But if I get a bump up to $30,000 and then I lose $6,000 of rental assistance, and that doesn't even count the healthcare component, that doesn't count SNAP benefits, that doesn't count any other factors that may be going into their life. Republicans are right that we have created a perpetual welfare system. They are just wrong in the culprits. They are wrong in assessing that if you're working full time at Walmart and still qualify for that kind of assistance, that is an indictment on Walmart's greed and not an indictment on welfare programs. The welfare programs should be for people that are not working. If you are working and collecting those benefits, there is a bigger issue at play here, and the issue isn't that the people aren't making enough money. And the issue isn't that we're not spending enough money, because all of these companies are still raking in record profits. And by the way, I did call my shot in 2024. I talked about this on Revolution Radio yesterday. When's the last time you've heard a Democrat talk about record profits or corporate greed that doesn't rhyme with schmermy schmanders? Genuinely. They'll talk to you about Trump's tariffs. They'll talk to you about the war in Iran, and that's why your cost of living is so high. When's the last time you've heard anybody talk about the fact that you're being price gouged no matter where you go to buy anything? Exactly. Neither side intends to address the issue. One side intends to make it irrevocably worse. And it's obvious. But it doesn't change the fact that both sides have no interest in actually addressing this affordability crisis. Kamala talked about it for about 2 weeks. You're absolutely right, Canary. Um, she talked about it for about 2 weeks. Welcome, Violet. You're late. Um, she talked about it for 2 weeks, and then Reid Hoffman got in the race and said, "Hey, instead of talking about corporate greed, what if you talk about Liz Cheney and saving democracy?" And I don't think a Democrat other than Bernie Sanders has already, I'm screwing with you, has talked about corporate greed since. Jay says, "My husband and I are making the most we ever have and still are paycheck to paycheck." Absolutely. Why aren't people talking about how bad the economy is? Here's the thing, they talk about it. But again, much like how when Biden was in office, I said, here, for those of you that are newer to the show, during the Biden years, America was trending better in terms of inflation than any other industrialized nation. It was bad. I'm going to go on a tangent here. This is going to take me like 5 minutes, but it'll be worth it. We were trending better than any other nation in terms of inflation post COVID. It was bad. Everything was expensive, but things were coming down fairly rapidly. As I've said more recently, corporate greed was evident at the beginning of 2022. When the earnings reports for 2021 started to come in, people were like, well, anyone who was paying attention, oh, holy shit, look at these prices, look at the profits they're bringing in. This isn't inflation. If it were inflation, their profits would be staying the same. Their profits have doubled, tripled, sometimes 8 times, depending on the company you're talking about, compared to what was happening pre COVID. Then you'd ask the Democrats why that is, other than Bernie Sanders, of course. And they would say Bidenomics is working, inflation is transitory, don't worry, you just don't understand economics. Then you'd go and ask Republicans why that was happening, and they would tell you it's because of Biden's Inflation Reduction Act and Build Back Better, and he pumped so much money into the system that that's why the inflation levels are so high relative to what they were. And neither one of them would ever take the actual driving components of it seriously. So flash forward to today, and it's the Trump administration saying Trumponomics is working, inflation is transitory, we got to stop him from getting them nukes. And it's the Democrats who, rather than taking on the main drivers, are saying it's Donald Trump's tariffs and it's Donald Trump's war in Iran. Now, are there truth to the Republican statements of the Biden years and the Democratic statements of the Trump years? Yes, but it does not take away from the reality that the profits for these companies are shooting through the roof. And for anybody trying to pretend that that is not a driving factor, they're only going to allow the conversation or the situation to exacerbate. Case in point, during the Biden years, Jerome Powell decided the best way to combat inflation, which again was trending better than it was in any other nation, was to raise the interest rates. Now, what does raising interest rates do? It makes it harder to hire, it makes it harder to loan money. It essentially tries to return the market back to normal. What the elites, what the Democrats or Republicans won't tell you is that back to normal means inflation at 2% and unemployment at 4%. You may not remember because it feels like a distant memory at this point, but for about 9 fleeting months, employees in America had more strength in negotiating tactics than they ever had in my adult life, having graduated during a recession and kind of had to figure out life from there. What's up, Resistance? Thanks for being here. It We had that power, and Jerome Powell raising the interest rates to return to normalcy was to get people laid off so that we would be competing for lower wages again relative to what was happening in the just after COVID aftermath. So as inflation was coming down, but corporate greed was persisting. Jerome Powell and the Fed kept interest rates high, stopped people from being able to buy homes, stopped people from being able to hire more, stopped people from being able to borrow money to start their own businesses. And as a result of that, that was supposed to bring inflation down, but it wasn't fucking inflation. It was corporate greed, and it was just the fact that these companies were arbitrarily raising prices, and since six companies control the better part of the entirety of all of the inventory that we buy, when those six companies decided to keep prices high, nothing was going to happen. The Fed could keep interest rates as high as they want. The inflation's never going to come down. And go back on my Spotify, go back to 2022. I was interviewing economists about this back then, and they were corroborating what I was saying. I was like, so tell me, explain to me, if inflation is trending the way it is, and we're raising interest rates through the Fed, other than this being an effort to get companies to lay people off so that employees no longer have negotiating power for their contracts, how is this supposed to benefit the better part of the economy? And they would tell you, Ben, as someone like talking about me, they're like, as someone who doesn't have an economic background in economics, that's a pretty succinct interpretation of exactly what's going on here. So flash forward to today, and the new Fed chair is talking about raising interest rates at least a couple more times before the end of the year. And again, the reason we're paying more is corporate greed, tariffs, and a war in Iran that has created a shortage in oil. There is no organic inflation going on, and yet our interest rates are continuing to go up. And yeah, I see. What are my thoughts on UBI? Yes, I think that's an obvious solution. And to put a bow on this conversation, because I said 5 minutes tangent, and I just hit 5 minutes because I see some people are timing me. If someone's saying it sounds Unite the People says sounds like they want us to tank. That's my interpretation of it. But to bring this full circle and to tie it to UBI, at the beginning of 2022, and I told you guys to look it up last week, and if you didn't, look it up this week, not during the show, after the show wraps up. End Corporate Greed Now Act. Um, Bernie Sanders proposed it in 2022. He showed the 30 companies that were engaging in corporate greed across 8 different industries. He said, I want to tax their excess profits, not all their profits, the excess profits over what their average profits had been between 2014 and 2019. And he said, um, I want to take that budget of whatever that sum of money is, which I think it was said that it would raise $300 billion. And he said, I want to return that to the American people in the form of a stipend so that they are able to get by. And it didn't even get brought up for a vote when Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So that's my thoughts on the economics of it all. I'll be honest, I don't remember why we got there. Relative to what's going on in Houston right now, but I appreciate the conversations nevertheless. I'm going to just rifle through a couple of random comments here. I see one person say flock the rich. Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. Cassandra saying feeling what Asher is feeling pretty hard. Saw the article this morning that somehow that stupid arch has been approved to next steps. I half ear listened to hours of testimony against it yesterday. LDU Quito fan says, notice how here in the United States, America wants our Latin American food, but at the same time doesn't want us speaking our language of Spanish. Interesting how America can't make up its mind. I think I'm right there with you. Jarmani simply just says spot on, Ben. CKK says, I like to remind anti-Hispanic MAGAs that Mexicans are white people. Also, why are we classifying all Hispanics as Mexicans? Our area is full of migrants. Oh, so for the record, and I should probably clarify this for people that are a little newer, anytime I say get the Mexicans, I'm intentionally being obtuse because that's a fake MAGA character that I created. I absolutely am sympathetic to that. I want them to feel stupid for the things that they think regarding immigrants. So that's why I classify everybody as Mexicans when I have this conversation. I'm doing it ironically because that's what they're doing, right? So I have like a tongue-in-cheek style of humor, and I also do a lot of things that are like recurring bits from years of doing a show. They took her gerbs, exactly as Danny says. I have recurring bits that may be perceived as insensitive, and just know that go with your gut about how you feel about me and my disposition towards life, and that probably won't lead you astray. And just be like, I go back and I watch some of these videos and I try sometimes not to laugh at my own dry sarcasm, but then when I don't laugh after I say things, there's some stuff that I say with a completely straight face, but like clearly I'm being ironic, but I never like LOL, JK. I just move on to the next sentence. And I'm like, oh, fuck. That's probably not a good way to do that if people clip that out of context. Um, that could be bad for me long term. But you're not wrong at all, CKK. I just have simple shorthand for doing my show. Tom says Build Back Better was the best thing Biden did. Jefferson Park was rebuilt, lots of workers involved, and I enjoyed it every day. Evers helped too. I agree. I have no gripes with Build Back Better other than I don't think it went far enough. As I often state, Joe Biden is the most progressive president of my lifetime. He wasn't nearly progressive enough, but he is the most progressive president of my lifetime. And he did some good shit. He did a lot of bad shit, but he did some good things too. And that's worth highlighting. My favorite tongue in cheek joke right now is Hunter Biden for president. It pisses MAGA off so good. Yeah. Yeah. I just don't want to be tied to that campaign, is all. Larry says we used to carry trade to keep interest rates down for 30 years. Rates are much higher now. That is an understatement. That is an absolute understatement. Um, And like I said, I oversimplify things as well, but the fact remains if um if the job of the Fed is to return to normalcy and to help keep inflation at 2%, inflation was down. We were doing better than anybody already. By 2023, we were already doing well, and all we did was get rate hikes. And what's up, Lula? And MAGA was more than happy to pounce on the rate hikes and cost of living crisis and not point out the real culprit. And because Democrats were calling people like me conspiracy theorists regarding um, corporate greed, they didn't have a platform to stand on. They went with Bidenomics is working and inflation is transitory. Republicans went with this is why liberals can't govern. And the reality was corporate greed. Then MAGA takes control and says we should cut those elites' taxes. I bet you'll give us more money. And no, they won't. You bastards. No, they won't. They never do. And Democrats are more than happy to say it's because of tariffs and Trump's war and not act like businesses are engaging in shady shit at all. And then Republicans will lose, Democrats will take over, and you know what will happen? Democrats won't crack down on corporate greed. They won't raise taxes beyond 40%. And MAGA will be more than happy to say that this cost of living crisis is far too expensive again. I had a water bottle. I know I did. So anyway, that was like 12 minutes of tangent, but you're welcome. Again, don't remember how we got there, but I think it was worth talking about nevertheless. It it's got warm water. It's got warm water in it today. Someone's asking on TikTok for my Waka Waka mug. By the way, now that the software is almost set up, I have people that are talking about helping me design some merch stuff that we're probably going to work on next week. So everybody put your ideas in a hat. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. And for the record, I just fill up like I buy a 24 pack and then I kind of stretch out the use. I don't want you guys thinking I'm contributing to this massive plastic problem that we have. I Ends, change your description, please. Yeah, got that, got that, got that. See, I'm on the phone again. When I was on the computer, it actually asks you, like, do you want to change your description? And, like, that's a very good prompt for people like me. Now that I'm back on the phone, because you guys can't hear one another when I have you all running through the computer, it doesn't ask me that and I forget. So I will start doing that again on Monday. Let me just make sure I haven't missed any of my peeps on the Facebook, the Book of Faces, if you will. All right, thanks for hanging out down there, but looks like no new comments. But why does hiring slow? What's the connection? Because businesses aren't willing to take out loans and expand interest rates on debt. It's kind of like anybody who had credit card debt in the last 4 years. Um, your monthly payments went up even if you stopped using your credit cards because the existing debt saw the interest rates raise, and that was going on everywhere. Buying new trucks, if you work in construction, you got to go and get a loan, or you're going to buy them in cash. If you're getting a loan, now the interest rates on, like, it's a domino effect. Yeah, everybody share the TikTok page. I'll do it too. Um, Not for the hiring budgets, but for expansion. Typically, with hiring comes expansion. You very rarely are hiring without more shit to do. As whatever I'm going to end up calling this media um, company ends up expanding, I may hire producers and film editors and things like that. But that also is going to come with more equipment. Am I going to have the initial capital to be able to buy all that stuff, or am I going to have to take out loans to get it? It's going to be a matter of the situation in the moment. Like, it's all correlated. Danny's asking what the financial gain for Weekend at Bernie's situation with Mitch McConnell. It's not a financial gain. It's that back in 2024, Kentucky passed a new law because that's what Republicans do. They did it here in Wisconsin as well, right after Scott Walker lost the governorship to neuter Tony Evers on his way in the door. Um, they passed a law in 2024 that essentially said as long as Mitch can hang on until August 3rd, the governor is not allowed to appoint somebody in his place. So if we found out today that he had passed, a Democrat, Andy Beshear, who is the governor of Kentucky, would be able to appoint his replacement until an election, which is quite a ways away. And they want to make sure that that's not the case. And so they have to wait until after August 3rd to be able to do it. Yeah, enter Thomas Massey, as Cassandra says. Yeah, that would be nice. And that's a new rule that they passed. It didn't used to work that way. It used to be when he passes, um, the governor gets to appoint a replacement, not anymore. So we'll see what ends up happening there. As I've stated, as a public facing figure, you're not entitled to privacy. Yeah, Unite the People says Andy needs to roll up in that hospital room. I agree, with cameras. Show us proof of life. But so that's my attitude there on the economy and what's going on in ICE. And I do want to reiterate, because I started saying it and I did get tangented. I wish that MAGA had the capacity to reflect on ICE the way they do flock cameras, because the uniparty is kind of being attacked from both the left and right surrounding flock cameras. Everybody can understand they don't want them, but as long as MAGA still believes that ICE is here only for brown people, they're going to be in favor of that surveillance. They can't put two and two together that the flock cameras are feeding the ICE agents that are feeding these different government agencies. They don't have the mental bandwidth to come to grips with that reality. And by the way, MAGA, not Republicans, because I do believe there are good-natured Republicans out there that actually believe in small government and not whatever their orange dad president says in that moment. I'm friends with several of them. But the people that still self-identify as MAGA, yeah, you're clueless. You're absolutely clueless. And that's not my TDS. You're clueless. But so that's my thoughts on that. We will be looking for video. We got 3 days before the next show, so there's a chance that we're going to end up seeing some different viewpoints of what took place in Houston, and I have a feeling that's going to be pretty damning. So allow me to wrap up with this sentiment right here and just make sure that we're all on the same page with that, because I sure as hell wasn't allowed to say it when I was on the air at the shitty little radio station, but here we are now. So yeah, the conservatism used to believe in small government. For those of you that were with me at the first flock meeting I was at, that's what I said on my way out the door, and you watched everybody stare at me and scowl because I walked out of the building and said, oh, these big government Republicans at it again, because they were all in favor of flock, right? What's up? What's up, Whistlestick? Freaking too many notifications on the phone and I can't reach it. Thank you for being here, Julie. All right. Oh yeah, they definitely hated it because like you don't get to be I'm for states' rights until states' rights are against what I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of small government unless that government is able to spy on me all the time. Like eventually you got to know what you're looking at and what you're working with. And anybody new, I guess this is the obligatory halfway through the show reminder. Anybody new here who hasn't already subbed to whatever you're on, please do, and then go find me on all my other pages. I have link trees in my Book of Faces and YouTube page. They can connect you to all of my socials so you can stay up to date on all the stuff I'm posting and doing. And as I often tell you, every subscription helps. So they're free and it helps quite a bit. And of course, I have my pages for the Minocqua Brewing Company Substack as well. So yeah, I saw you there, Violated. I commented back. Global highlights no nation building under George W. Bush. Exactly. But what if they might get nukes? Um, Legislation from the bench, cry from GOP. Exactly. The hypocrisy of all of it knows no bounds. And again, it's extra infuriating given what took place in Maine, because now they're all acting holier than thou as if their dad president doesn't have a case decided against him against the grape, if you will, of E. Jean Carroll, and they're acting like, yeah, well, there's a lot up in the air about that one. But Democrats, like the only people who can say they are actually in favor of supporting women and survivors of sexual assault is the actual left, not liberals, because they were willing to vote for Andrew Cuomo. The actual left is the only group of people willing to call it out. But and while it's frustrating when you can lose a candidate that has some good policies, I'd rather be on that side of the equation than the other. Um, just from a being able to sleep at night standpoint. Um, but so moving on into other topics of the day here, I just got to pull my notes up here so I can keep my thoughts in order. I have too many pages open right now. Oh, and one more thing before I move on, actually. Um, yeah, Wizzle Slack says just from a having kids standpoint. Exactly. Exactly. I'd rather be able to put my head down at night than have to have the karma of supporting some jag on my soul. So yeah. But one more thing before I move on from ICE, and this is the two sides of the same coin thing. So in Michigan, you got Abdul El Sayed running against Haley Stevens. Haley Stevens is the APAC candidate. She's received over $7 million from them, according to APAC Tracker. Not only has El Sayed not received money from APAC, he hasn't received money from a single corporation. He believes all corporate money should be out of politics. This should be an 80-20 election, but as I mentioned, APAC has $7 million in this race, so it's actually 42-42 in the most recent poll, with 17% of people still undecided. So um that's going to be a photo finish in Michigan, but I want to highlight here um Haley Stevens, direct quote, seemed generally impressed with ICE during the visit and their treatment of detainees. Of note, there is female leadership here. And there are women who walked with us today and explained how important it is to treat with humanity, Stevens said. Oh, well, that's good. That's good. The people who are overseeing 52 dead immigrants in ICE detention facilities, some of them are women. So hashtag girl boss. I guess that's all that matters. That's liberal politics in a nutshell. That's liberalism. That's why liberalism loses. Because if Haley Stevens were on the ticket, I'd probably just sit out that vote because I wouldn't fundamentally be able to see a difference. I'm hopeful El Sayed comes out on top and is able to overcome the $7 million. But just to be clear, liberals trying to play nice with ICE. How many Republican voters do you think are going to jump on Haley Stevens instead of Mike Rogers in Michigan because she said, there's a lot of girl bosses in ICE, so maybe we should lighten up on them a little bit. How many of you guys think that? Because I hate to break it to you, if you think that, I'm from the land of bridges, and I have so many bridges that I could sell you if you were interested. And it seems like you're in the market for bridges right now if you believe that she's winning over any Republican voters talking like that. She's making me think she's a sack of crap, but she's not winning over Republican voters at all. And speaking of winning over Republican voters, it doesn't matter how big of a fan you are of ICE. If you can't afford a house, eventually that's going to wear thin. If you guys haven't seen, today is the deadline for the Trump administration to sign the housing bill that realistically is a window dressing more than anything else, but it will give the Republican Party something to run on because other than cruelty, I'm struggling to find a second platform initiative these days. Um, this would limit hedge funds to 150 buildings per company. That would ultimately end up just creating a bunch of shell companies and continuing to buy up all the homes. But nevertheless, thank you for the follow, Sheila. Nevertheless, it was passed in bipartisan fashion. There's a couple of good things in there, but by and large, it's not going to address the obvious issues facing potential homeowners. But Donald Trump has hit his deadline. Today is the last day, and he has said point blank that he is not going to sign it. And it really does make me question what the strategy is. Did he take funds from these different companies, saying that he wouldn't sign something, and so he's holding up his end of the deal? But there's enough people working in unison outside of him that he knows it would be political. Can't say that word, I'm sure, on TikTok. It would not be politically expedient, we'll say it that way, for Trump to flat out veto it. So it looks like he's just not going to sign it, and then it's going to go into law on the other side. And I think inevitably he's going to brag about the fact that the bill passed, even though he didn't sign it, as we get closer to elections. And the reason why I know that he is going to brag about um, signing that bill is because we don't have to speculate. We can look at one of his favorite little underlings and the way that they are handling the housing crisis and the way that they are talking about the housing crisis. If you guys haven't seen it yet, Tom Tiffany has a new ad out on all of the socials and YouTube pages where he's sitting at a picnic table with a bunch of 70-year-olds, and they're all talking about how they just want a good old fashioned Midwesterner like Tiny Tom Tiffany. And I'm sure it's absolutely speaking to a large percentage of the population there. In that ad, he is talking about housing affordability and the importance of housing affordability and the fact that we're not going to be able to afford houses if something isn't done and the free market isn't doing it. Can we all agree, other than Dale, that the free market isn't doing it for housing prices? I think we're all on the same page there. The government has to get involved, much like it did in the 40s and 50s, building homes and providing some type of competition at a baseline value to allow people just trying to enter the homes, not looking for McMansions, just looking for a place to live, are able to get into. Wisconsin Politics is reporting, as Tom Tiffany is talking about how if you elect him to governor, he is going to be the voice that fights for you and your housing affordability. Not only did Tom Tiffany not vote for the housing legislation that Donald Trump is allowing to sit on his desk, but he is the only Republican representative from Wisconsin that did not vote for it. He didn't vote against it. He just didn't vote at all. So much like I said, and I will be firing off an email to see if we can get a statement from him. Did Donald Trump not sign it because he took money from different hedge funds and private equity groups, and rather than back out of, because then maybe he loses the donations, he says, look, I didn't sign the bill. If Congress wants to pass it, there's really nothing beyond vetoing that I can do. And if I veto it, you're going to have a lot less support in Congress going forward. And if that's the case, what led to Tom Tiffany not signing it either? Because he knows it's a politically viable enough issue that putting it in your ads with all the boomers makes sense. And yet he's not willing to vote on this milquetoast solution. It's not like it's a bill that's going to allow for homes to be built. It talks about regulations getting removed, but something tells me that just means they're going to put like electrical wiring closer to water sources, um, and it will still be just as expensive. Like, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when Republicans talk about cutting regulations, it very rarely ever actually results in a benefit for any of us, but it is much cheaper for the companies to produce things, which I guess is all that really matters. But so, reporting in Wiz Politics, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is a sweeping housing bill awaiting President Trump's signature. Each time it came to the House, Tiffany was listed as not voting. His spokesperson said he missed all the votes because of scheduling conflicts. Tiffany, who is running for governor of Wisconsin, said in the April campaign ad that he's focused on cutting red tape and stopping Wall Street from buying our homes. Two issues that are both in that legislation that he did not vote for a single time. On May 20th, when the House considered a Senate amendment to the housing bill, Tiffany didn't cast a ballot despite voting on measures later that day. Emily Stuckey, a spokesperson for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, said Tiffany had 3 chances to do what was right, and he couldn't even be bothered to show up for the vote. Got to put that nose to the grindstone there, Tommy. Seems like you want to just cash your paychecks. Seems like you're a bit of a welfare queen, Tommy. Interesting, isn't it? Carla says, I want to know what those scheduling conflicts were. I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us do. So, again, and be careful saying this in your real life because these kind of comments will get you fired. But other than abject cruelty to immigrants, can somebody fill me in on what the second phase of MAGA is? Because I'm struggling to find it. Because I was of the impression that Donald Trump's a builder. He's a constant builder. He knows how to get things done, and he'll make sure that housing prices come down. Oh, wait, never mind. He's caught several times on a microphone saying he actually wants to make houses more expensive. And for the record, I'm a property owner. For those of you that are newer to the show, if housing prices get more expensive, I absolutely benefit. I'm actually heavily considering cashing out of my building right now because part of me feels like there's a bubble coming and I kind of want to get ahead of it. But also, it could just continue shooting through the roof to infinity. because it doesn't feel like either party really has any viable solutions. You may remember during the campaign season, Harris's proposal was a $15,000 subsidy for all first-time home buyers. So, of course, because it's a Democratic policy, it's not for everybody. So, instinctively, plenty of people feel alienated. Um, but on top of that, if there's one thing we've learned from governments providing subsidies, it's that all it really does is drive the prices up. All it really does is add $15,000 to the house, because that's kind of what led to the inexplicably or very explicably high cost of college, is that subsidies were applied to it. So colleges slowly raised their prices to match those subsidies. None of us noticed because the subsidies were just kind of doled out as all tax dollars are. You just kind of pay your taxes and the money disappears into the ether. And now we're sitting here as funds are now being cut to allow people to go to school with these astronomical costs, and more people finding themselves unable to get in from monetary reasons rather than not wanting to educate yourself reasons. So you've got the Republican Party, whose suggestion is shut up, losers. And you got the Democratic Party, whose solution is we're actually going to take more revenues that could be applied to like Medicare for all and affordable childcare, give it to people to buy homes, but then not apply any rules that would prevent homeowners from raising their prices to match those subsidies. And those are the two parties that we're voting between. Are you starting to see a trend for this show today? We got a text that says, Ben, we can't even get local townships or cities to allow smaller, affordable homes and subdivisions. Exactly. Because it's all about the markup. It's all about the markup. I could redo my kitchen and bath and sell it for even more, right? Like, but there might be people like, I don't need the nicest kitchen and bathroom. I just want a place where I can cook food and shower and use the restroom with a roof over my head. But everybody's going to take that time and invest a couple $1,000s extra because it increases your property value 2 to 3 times for every $1 you put in. That was true before COVID. That was called good property ownership back in the day. Now, with the cost of living, it's only higher. So the idea that people would willingly buy these tiny plot starter homes for less money, like you could build them for less money, but also sell them for less money. And the margin is significantly smaller than building the McMansions, letting them sit and finding a rich yuppie family who's willing to move in there later. And there is no, like, if the free market worked, really think about that. If the free market worked, there is a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis. People are looking for smaller homes. Why has the free market not stepped up? Why are there not companies stepping up to get into the industry? Newbies, 20 something year olds who have the skills and are looking to get involved in this industry but don't necessarily see a path forward. Stand by, Robin. I'll get you on. If the housing market really worked that way, why then, or excuse me, if the free market really worked that way, why then isn't somebody filling that gap? Because people want it. Hell, if there were $120,000 house here in the Fox Valley, I'd probably just go throw a down payment on, even though I don't know where life's going to take me in 2 years. I would probably rather just do that than pay these shitty rents for a single bedroom apartment that before I came here, these were just plain ass white walls. My apartment's the grayest place you can imagine. And counting utilities, the bulk that I pay for a one bedroom apartment in Menasha is freaking over $1,250. So I would probably rather just buy the home. Why aren't people building these homes? If the free market's supposed to work, you don't want the government involved. Fine. Why aren't people building these homes? Global says zoning laws restrict people's rights for profit. Single family homes does not allow unrelated persons. That doesn't help. Absolutely doesn't help. Carla says this is Dale using this is Dale using Carla's account. I was able to afford a house and so was my softball team. Just save your money and work harder. Again, this is Dale, not Carla. Yeah. Dale, get off of Carla's account. No one buys your shit and no one believes your baseball team is that effective, all right? Luke says there's not enough money to justify compared selling it to McMansions. That's my attitude. That's my attitude. Jarmani says I paid 115 for my house in 2016, and today I could sell it for over 200K. Yeah, I mean I've talked about it. I bought mine for under 200, and now I could sell it for closer to 350. And realistically, Jaro, that dichotomy between your buy and sell and my buy and sell is why it's so much higher. And for the record, I see trees are cool saying your rent is as much as my mortgage that I got pre-COVID. So I own my building still in Pittsburgh. I still own a duplex, and my mortgage that I have rent or PMI on um is more than $100 cheaper than my rent to own a building in downtown Pittsburgh. And my rent, and nothing against the people or the city of Menasha, but I'm not going to confuse Menasha for Pittsburgh. And this is what they're charging here because I bought pre COVID. Are people asking who Dale is? Yeah. Dale's this jag who would call my show. I'll have to go find old clips of him and share it with you guys because when he would call, and once I started videoing myself, you'd actually see my eye roll when he'd call because I'm like, oh, here we fucking go. And my mind would say that. I couldn't say that out loud. Now that this is outside of the box, unfiltered, I can say it. I'd be like, here we fucking go again. Be like, I don't know. He's like, I everybody on my kid on my baseball team that I coached, all those kids grew up and they all have good paying jobs and they all got into houses pretty easy. And so it became a running bit that the housing market sucked for everybody except for the 9 people on Dale's baseball team who all found themselves in wonderful homes and succeeding at life in ways that none of us could possibly hope to do. Justin says, I can't wait to own a house. I know it has headaches and costs, but damn it, my rent has gone up twice. I pay $60 for a garage and $25 for a parking spot. It's stupid and owned by a corporation. Mine too, dude. Mine too. Um, it's obnoxious. It's obnoxious and it's not getting any better. And my heart breaks for the people that aren't in. Again, I've said it since you guys have known me. My show would be a lot more panicky. Like I do a show about people drowning in college debt, not being able to afford a home. And I am a property owner and I paid off a 60 grand college debt realistically in about 5 years because I hit the job lottery shortly after getting out of college. It's funny losing a parent and losing like your metaphorical social safety net rather than the literal social safety net. That'll kick your ass in gear real quick. But if this were a show being done by someone who was not being an empath, but was actually experiencing what I talk about, this would be a much more angsty show. Um, because I can only imagine. Hell, I lost my job on a whim and found a job pretty quickly, and I still am sitting here like economically, like, oh, this is a little shaky, and like realistically, while my situation sucks and people shouldn't have to go through what I'm going through, it could have been a whole hell of a lot worse. And if anything, it's only furthered my resolve in busting up this broken ass system, because now that I got to see it from the inside, even as briefly as I did, and knowing that there's an entire political movement based on the idea that people that collect unemployment are lazy, able-bodied men playing video games in their mother's basement. Um, let's just say there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room for anybody that wants to come on this show and try and defend that argument going forward. Not that there ever was, but especially now, because as weird as it is, um, I I've always been an empath for it, but people need to experience it for themselves to truly grasp what's going on. I always say that about losing a relative to cancer. It's like when you hear someone in your life that isn't related to you, like a friend of yours, parent or aunt or something, or sibling, has cancer, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Then, if you've actually experienced it firsthand and you hear somebody else say that, it hits different, you know? And I feel like it's the same idea with the home ownership. It's the same idea with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. You can think you understand, but until you've been there, it's hard to understand. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was you, Tim. Tim Roush is saying, we can't even get local townships or cities to allow smaller, affordable homes or subdivisions. Dale's team is a prime example. Those kids climbing out, clawing out are the privileged. I'm not saying insulting privileged. Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I say. When I say Democrats, Tim, make it harder to be middle class, what you're talking about is exactly what I'm talking about. They place those regulations. They claim that it's to screw with big businesses and billionaires. They all circumvent it or pay the fines because the fines are a pittance relative to the annual income they bring in. And what it fundamentally does, it makes it harder for people that are working class or trying to start their own business. Um, to be able to do so. He followed up and said, show me a 900 square foot home subdivision. Exactly. Exactly. That's by design. And they say it's because of environmental concerns. And maybe it is. But I don't think people are buying that for much longer. Sensei says fines are the cost of doing business. Exactly. Exactly. It's just what happened with Cal Maine, which is what Asher was talking about. They were gouging us. I have segments about egg companies gouging us in January of 2023, and I kept talking about it through January of 2025. And I was told I was a conspiracy theorist. The data is now out. They gouged us. It's cut and dry. It happened, and the fine is something like $1.6 million, and the revenue they generated was $380 million. So you tell me why we shouldn't be gouging if the gouging results in a 250 time benefit for the company doing so. Of course, they're going to do it. And the same thing applies here. It's why small homes aren't being built, and fundamentally why rents are increasing, because people can't get out of the homes. And who do Republicans blame for that? Fucking Mexicans. Yeah, and CKK, I do understand, but only because people filled me in. But CKK says you don't understand the context of Dale's baseball team. He coached at a private school where the wealthy of the area sent their kids. I do understand that, but only because I was filled in after one of the calls. And exactly, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like I have friends in my life, obviously Republicans. Both of them had their student loans paid off. Both of them were given the money for a down payment on their first home. One of them acts like they're self-made, and one of them says, "Yeah, I recognize that I got a lot of handouts in life to get to where I am, but I'm still, for whatever reason, not in favor of funding other people's handouts." Um, which is better, I guess. At least it's self-aware than the other. Dale had no self-awareness, and anyone who knows him personally, tell him how to get on this show, because I think that would be worth it. And speaking of the eggs, really quick, one of my shadow producers actually messaged me this before I went on the air. Have you guys seen the Reuters story coming out of the USDA? Um, it had been reported that the USDA, this is as per Reuters, this is real. Since we're talking about gouging and beef prices, we're also engaging in gouging. And now, because Trump is the most inept president in contemporary American history and possibly ever, a lot of the decisions he has made have led to flesh-eating viruses in the beef, as well as a number of other factors contributing to a lessening of the beef stock. However, people in the industry, who I'm not going to drop dimes, but I have a source, say they're producing basically at standard levels. And despite the fact that they are producing, excuse me, at standard levels, I'm going to now read this. No, I don't need that. USDA said it received incorrect beef export sales data and published it in a weekly report on July 2nd. The data showed that 2026 sales reached a high of 126,062 metric tons in the week that ended in June 25. The actual number, again, what was reported by a government agency, was 126,000 metric tons. 126,000 metric tons. What was the actual number, you ask? Think of a number. Obviously, the way I'm presenting it should lead you to believe that that number is lower than what you think. I'm going to now hit you with what the number is. Everybody have a number in your head. Great, you're all wrong. The correct answer is 12,000. It was a 90% lower volume than what had been reported, and it was discovered a week earlier. Our industries are struggling right now. Our government is reporting fake information that has nothing to do with the color of the reflecting pool. It is getting reported. I'm reading you a Reuters report. How many people do you really think are reading Reuters on a daily basis? How many of you listening to me right now knew that that happened? I wouldn't have known that happened if somebody that I knew didn't have a relative in the industry who brought it to their attention. Because you can't know everything. And as Robin says, you can't ever trust the government numbers. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I would have people that would send me whitehouse.gov metrics when Biden was in office, and I would say, I'm not reading this on the air. Send me a real source. I'm not here to do government propaganda. Obviously, the Trump government is lying, but they all lie. It's just that Trump is disgusting about it. Yeah, the egg price fixing has been talked about for a while, or not a while, Harambe, but I mean, it came out a couple weeks ago. But like I said, I was interviewing people with Farm Action, who is a pack that deals with farmers' rights and all that. They were reporting on this collusion in 2023. If you're familiar with Matt Stoller, who writes the big newsletter on Substack, he focuses very much on monopoly, antitrust. He was involved in the Obama administration. He's actually been on my show before. He was reporting on this back in 2023. It was sources that I trust all talking about this. Um, and the media said it was a conspiracy. Oh, did all these companies just get greedy right now? No, but they had the cover of a pandemic to be able to jack their prices up, and they knew that you would run cover for them in the name of trying to convince the 90% of Americans looking for information that anybody talking like me was a crackpot. And now here we are. It comes out that it's true, barely gets any coverage in the mainstream media. No apologies to the people like me who were actually calling this out 3 years ago when it was obviously happening, and nothing is fundamentally going to get fixed. All right, I'm going to catch up on some messages here. There's another new subdivision going up in the Fox West Y. They look like they're nothing special, not huge, popping up like mushrooms, starting at $415,000, according to the sign on Highway 76. Oh, so I just need a simple 80 grand saved up to get into there? Okay, okay, okay. It doesn't sound too bad. Alex says you should ask Greenville local mailman Mikey for how he feels about ticky tack specials going up everywhere. Um, Larry says homeowners insurance and property tax went way up too. Minimum costs for a house per month is about $2,000. Oh, exactly. My brother and dad are both real estate agents, so they showed me if I did sell. Okay, so let's get into this. I own a duplex in Pittsburgh. I rent out a 2 bedroom apartment with central air for barely $1,000, and I rent out a 1 bedroom apartment for not even $900. I'm not going to get specific, but just so you understand. If I were, and I make plenty of money between those two rents, that more than covers the mortgage and covers a decent amount of the rent that I pay. Any single person listening, if you find yourself in a position to do so, yeah, it's absolutely cheap, Sensei. I could be charging $300 more per unit if I wanted to, but like I like practicing what I preach, so I don't. And I've lived out here for 4 years. My tenants have never experienced a rate increase. But so if I were to sell based on the cost that houses are going in my neighborhood, mixed with what the interest rate is and what the insurance rates are, the mortgage would go from barely over $1,000 to just under $3,000. Now, if somebody with my mindset who did not want to get into the industry to gouge bought that building, you're not buying it to take a loss. So now your monthly payment is $3,000. So if I were to sell, what do you think is going to happen to the rents of the individuals that live in the 2 apartments that are in my building? And the person who bought wouldn't even be classified as an ass because, again, you don't buy investment properties to lose, not to mention things break. If you saw what was going on with my concrete right now, I may be raising the rates for the first time ever because I'm about to have a pretty hefty construction bill coming my way here in the very near future. But so if someone were to buy at that rate, all of a sudden now you're charging $1,800 and $1,200 a month for rent, and that's to break even. And I don't think anybody's looking to break even. And that's assuming a human being buys the building and not a private equity firm, because now they don't even look at it like human beings renting anymore. They say they'll let it sit unoccupied. They don't care. And what are they going to charge? Probably closer to 3,500 and 2,000 to live in the building that I'm charging people to live in. And no one's going to bat an eye. And I'm going to walk away a rich boy. And the only people that lose are the people that were living there and everybody else who wants to live in that area, because now that's going to be what the market standard is in that neighborhood. I understand how it works. I'm part of the goddamn system. Unwillingly, but you can't really make a difference from the gutter. Don't you end up compromising maintenance when you suppress rents? No, because I'm not suppressing rents. Again, I turn a decent profit on the building with the rents that I charge. And, well, I mean, up until 3 weeks ago, I had a good paying job. So, like, again, I'm not an ass. The people, it's like, have you ever worked at a successful restaurant and the owners would always be like, "Oh God, it's always such a tight. It's all the margins are so tight. I'm barely getting by." And then they show up in like Audis and like dressed very nicely, and it's like, well, all right, it doesn't seem like you're struggling that much. I'm not saying you're loaded, but I'm saying like you're not paycheck to paycheck either. It's just being real with yourself. Like I am not a rich man, but As Hayes said, fair rent is now considered suppression. Exactly. The fact that I'm not gouging my tenants, people say, oh, well, Ben just doesn't get business. No, I get business, and I think it's horseshit. And I'm trying to provide a different avenue in my small corner of the planet that I reside in. And like, I'm not saying life would be better if more people in the real estate industry acted like me, but life would be better if more people in the real estate industry acted like me. And I mean that. Sharon says if you look at the new construction of houses, most of them are ticky tack box cut homes that aren't anything special, but all cost 400K. Herb says 2 weeks ago, a local store had bacon odds and ends for $2 a pound. This week, it's a BOGO for $8.49 a pound. Jesus Christ. Um, how does one find land early in life? I mean, in my like, I lucked out. Um, global. I just lucked out is all that happened. Like I said, I hit the job lottery. I was working jobs that I hated. Um, but that paid well, and I was smart with it. I was living in a very fun part of town in my mid 20s. I sacrificed a year and a half to go move back in with my dad, who's an awesome dude, but like, when you're in your 20s, you want to be out there doing your thing. Moved back for a year and a half, paid off the student debt, went and bought the duplex. But again, if I lived that exact same life today, not in a million years. Other people saying I bought a house in the nick of time, but now I feel stuck. I get that. I saw somebody else saying avoiding the temptation to sell also saves you boatloads in capital gain taxes. Well, now, again, last man standing. I'm a white guy. I know how white people operate. You take that money, you funnel some of it in your, you can throw 5 grand in your Roth IRA, you invest some of it in the SPY. Like, believe you me, I know the systems at work. I know the ways that people. I have an accountant. Like I know what it is. I call it white people shit, but like I know the rules. Um, and then the system is designed for me to talk to all of you like I am somehow superior or a badass for accomplishing what I accomplished. And I'm like, no, I'm lucky as fuck. And anybody who feels like this system is rigged against them, that they're being colluded against, is absolutely accurate. So, um, it's probably why I don't have a show on FCC airwaves anymore, because fundamentally, in media, to be successful, you need to be telling people like yourselves that everybody who can't get into a home is a failure. And I am here to tell you that the system is a failure that is letting down millions of people every month who have jobs that are saving money. Most people in this country are lucky if they get to put away $500 a month. Most people are lucky if they get to put away $500 a month. And you're telling me that they are supposed to get um to $80,000 of a down payment in order to be able to buy a home? That's horseshit. None of that makes any sense. And I think it's worth calling it out. But the Republican Party would rather say people are lazy and impatient when we're looking at the average first time home buyer becoming 40 something years old and acting like that's normal or the fault of millions of individuals. Thanks for being here, Debbie. Yeah, little boxes is stuck in my head too now. Spider Ben, Spider Ben, housing costs are insane in California. Whistling, everyone have a great weekend. Oh, I can only imagine what it's like in California. Yeah, and as Sensei highlights, but we have our first trillionaire. It's disgusting. And then to bring it full circle, Tom Tiffany and Donald Trump don't want to sign a bill that prevents private equity from buying up all the stock. That allegedly, probably not, is going to make things cheaper for um people to be able to get in. And they're voting no or abstaining on that and then want to show up and tell you that it's a very important issue to them. And I'm here to say that isn't going to fly. Brian says having parents who stress to move out, buy your own home, buy your land you can afford. Yeah, see, that is the one fortunate thing is Mediterraneans. Like, I'll be honest with you. I think my dad, like Greek men specifically, a lot of them live at home until they're married. And that's just been like culturally the standard. It's not weird. Italians are the same way. Think about if you have Italians or Greeks in your life, and you'll probably realize I'm right. But the idea of living at home isn't when I wanted to move out, it was almost like fucking why? And I was like, because like it's just a different mindset amongst Mediterraneans. But yeah, I produced for a guy who referred to getting his kids out of the house as getting them off the payroll. And I'm like, that's a strange way to look at it. Oh, sorry, I grew up in a house with parents that loved me. I'm sorry, I'm joking. Stream of consciousness sometimes gets the better of me. Luke says staying at home longer isn't a bad thing. Asians do it too, but shouldn't be forced to stay at home. Exactly. And that was kind of what brought about this entire segment idea as we get ready to wrap up. I've been a little off topic today, but 49% of Americans between 18 and 30 live at home. Again, not judging, not calling them failures, not any of the bullshit that comes from older generations or politicians. Um, I'm saying that that's an obscene number. 50%. That's a 12% increase from 2019, which is already high, but more in line with what the standard is. Cannot stress enough. I'm not advocating for communism. Feel like I got to make that disclaimer. China has a 90% home ownership rate. People be like, well, Ben, have you seen the homes? They're like one room boxes. Yeah. They have a 90% home ownership rate. Some of them have nicer homes, others have smaller one room studio apartments. I would be fine if America threw up a bunch of one room studio apartments all over the nation and got people into homes. I would be fine with that. And then when you're ready to move on, you can sell at cost to the next people, or the government buys it back, or what the fuck ever. It doesn't matter. All I know is 50% of people under 30 living at home, not owning. I'm not saying 50% are owning. I'm saying they live at home. They can't rent. They can't do any of those things. I was just thinking of you, Susan. A spray can of Raid surged over $2 since last summer. It sucks. Yeah, I feel that. Um, 50% can't afford to rent. Build the homes and fucking put people in them. This isn't rocket science. Um, Other nations are figuring this out. Other nations are doing it, and we mock them as socialist or communist. You know what they have? Homes. If capitalist is so star spangled awesome, why is it so difficult for half of people that are starting their lives, that are in the prime of their life, the time when they're supposed to be going out and meeting strangers and making dumb decisions and developing what they want to do in their career? Why are they all relegated to living in their parents' house? That's not normal. And that's coming from a guy who lives in a community where it is normal for that to be the case. So please know that I am not judging. This should be called out. Cassandra says, moved out as soon as I could. At 18, two-bedroom, lower apartment, $300 a month. Where? Exactly. I was living in a place called Mount Washington. If you've never been to Pittsburgh, a bunch of guys bought a place or rented a place. It was $300 a month. You had the most, anytime you watch a Steelers game, um, and you see a beautiful like landscape shot of downtown Pittsburgh, it's being filmed from Mount Washington to give you an idea of what the view we saw every single day. I wasn't like calling you out, Cassandra. I meant like where today? Like where are you going for $300 today was my point. I should have been more specific. Um and it was the mid 90s, Yvette, is that what she's talking about. And that's my point. I'm talking about 2010. Herb says, "What do you need when starting out? Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room." That's what I have right now, man. Like that's all I need right now. Like that's just it is people try to paint my generation and Gen Z as like wanting all this stuff so that they don't have to reconcile with the fact that it's not a bunch of young people looking to live in mansions. It's about a bunch of young people looking to live in one bedroom apartments. And as I've been kind of stipulating all week, my rent here in Menasha is about $80 more than what my unemployment benefits would be had I applied for them. So if I'm losing $80 a month just on rent, what do I do with the rest of it? And Tiny Tom Tiffany tells you we need to cut those benefits because there's too many lazy people out there. I don't know about you guys, but I'm working harder than I ever fucking have in my life trying to get this stuff off the ground. Herb says that's the kind of stuff that should be built. People don't need granite countertops when starting out. Absolutely. I don't even need you don't even need countertops. The shit that I was doing in my early 20s when stuff was affordable um is exactly what you think it is. It's the stuff all 20-year-olds were doing. And it's fun. Like I said, it's romantic when you're 22 and that's what your life is. It's anger inducing when you're 32, and it's downright debilitating when you're 42. And that's what Vote for Aragon that says. Then stop putting the granite countertops and everything. Yeah, Cassandra says it's insane. Welcome to Focus Property Management. I finally can shit talk them because I'm moving next month. Welcome to Focus Property Management. How can we improve your life today? Charge me $300 less, you fucking criminals, for starters. Um, And this is what I'm saying. This kind of puts a bow on the whole conversation. In a free market where everybody has the ability to build whatever life they want, why is there no home developer that realizes that none of the other home developers are building houses for people in their 20s? Why is there not a single company that's like, yo, this is an entirely untapped market of millions of people? You could become a national company like that. You could start in the Fox cities if you know. The only reason I don't know how to do it is I'm the least handy landlord you will ever meet in your life. I would be starting from ground zero. Why is not a single, and I don't mean the hedge funds want to maximize their profits. Why is there nobody that wants to get into the industry who wants to sell to a population of people where it would be like the scene in Finding Nemo where it's like mine, 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 just a bunch of fish on top of one another because everybody would be clamoring for $150,000 a year buildings that are fucking 5 rooms total and one bath. You know what I mean? Like, Where are the developers that allegedly would be coming out of the free market to fill a need? Obviously, something is suppressing it, whether it's the regulations from the government, excuse me, whether it's the cost of building materials and the fact that people are getting gouged on that end, and the only way to make it profitable to build in 2026 is to build the McMansions. And I see King Raymond, you keep inviting me to co-host. I'm not in a position to do that right now, but I appreciate the offer. I'd be down to do it another time. Um, Wait, what are you saying is not right? I was paying 350 my part of the rent on a 2 bedroom 25 years ago. Those were the good old days. Exactly. Exactly. And that's what everybody's acting like it is right now. They're like, well, prices are a little higher because no, no, no. This is gouging. This is collusion. This is intentional. Thanks for being here, Jarmani. C7557 says, my husband used to build starter homes in Washington County. That was 30 years ago. Phil says they want that fast money instead. Exactly. And I do think inevitably the bubble will burst. I refuse to believe if it doesn't burst, and I'm not calling for this, social media overlords. I am just a student of history. There will be a revolt if it doesn't reverse. 50%. Take that stat with you into the weekend. 50% of people 18 to 29 are living at home, not owning, choosing not to rent. And you want to know how the Wall Street Journal reported that? Oh, look at these young people being fiscally savvy. No, this isn't fiscally savvy. It's absolutely necessary because it's impossible to do anything different. Tisha, what do you mean aren't the builders you're looking for building for 55 plus communities? I don't see anything like that going up anywhere, personally. Let's see who we got here. Hayes, I don't know if this was an accident, but if you'd like to say something, I'd be happy to bring you on. What's on your mind?
Hey Ben, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
Pretty good. I just wanted to, it was not an accident. I just wanted to chime in about, you were speaking earlier about the boomer perspective of like get up and move out. And I recall thinking about this about 15 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I was speaking with my mom who was complaining about my 18, 19-year-old stepbrother who was living in their home, and she was complaining that he can't afford to pay the rent that they charge him now that he's 18 plus, his own bills, and he's going to school and he's working. And I remember telling her, and I said, you know maybe if you support him now, you will, maybe charge a little bit less in rent because you got to pay your way at some point. But instead of expecting top tier adult behavior from the jump at 18, from this boomer perspective, she wasn't a bad person, but that's just the perspective she held for my
Sure.
stepbrother. And support him now while he's in school, at least through college, to ensure that when he does leave the nest and fly away, he's secure. He has a good job and education under his belt, and it's probably less likely that he will return home because he failed out in the world. Because he's been struggling the whole time and has built up debt because he's trying to pay all of his bills the moment he turns 18. So I understand that. And I think it's unfortunate, it's 10 years later now and the situation is dramatically worse for people trying to leave the nest. And it was always hard, trying
Sure.
to jump from being a young adult to full-fledged adulthood and pay everything. But I just remember having that conversation with my mom, and she's like, oh yeah, maybe if I give him a little bit more support now, in 3 years when he's done with school, or 4 years when he's done with school, he'll be able to leave and be more secure. Anyways, that's all I wanted.
Yeah, what's the saying? Measure twice, cut once, or whatever it is. Don't rush the situation here. Otherwise, as you said, then there's kind of a return that is obviously looking to be avoided.
Like most people, when I know when I left home for like 4 years when I turned 18, and I did come back for about 6 months. I needed to like a little bit of a respite before I left home again. But I think that that's common, and you shouldn't feel like necessarily a failure or anything like that. And now I understand the situation is different. It's dramatically more difficult, with rents, as you were saying. But yeah, I just wanted to chime in. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. Awesome input and a great note to end on. And I love all the new interactions that we're getting with people because of all the different social media elements here, which is really fun. For me, at least. I hope it is for all of you guys as well. May as well put a bow in it there, though. We're going to call it. We'll be back on Monday. Hopefully new and improved. Still going to have the same studio setup. That's a while away yet. Well, not a while away, but hopefully September for that kind of stuff. But we're slowly working through it here. I appreciate everybody putting up with all the bugs and kind of metrics that I have to use in order, or measures I have to use to kind of get everybody involved and taking part in the show. So I do appreciate your patience as I try and rebound here. A couple of you have been sending me really nice messages about how it feels like the show's better than ever. And I don't know about that, but I feel like we are trending in the right direction, and it feels like it's getting better every day, especially relative to a couple weeks ago for sure. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for hanging out with me on the Tuba U and Book of Faces. Subscribe, you nerds. That definitely helps me out quite a bit. You can check me out on Minocqua as well. So we'll be back soon. Talk to you Monday, and check me out on socials over the weekend. I appreciate that, Violet. That's very nice of you on TikTok.